Sandy and Nora's podcast.
Hey, Nora.
Hey, Sandy.
How are you doing this fine summer day?
Oh, yeah, I guess it's summer. Happy summer to everybody. Just realized that that's happened.
Officially summer.
Wouldn't know here because it's been cold and rainy, which I am not complaining about because watching the heat in France and in Europe is pretty frightening. And as I've mentioned before on this podcast, because I live in Quebec, people in my social circles are way more oriented to what's going on in France than they are anywhere else in the world. So, yeah. Anyway, how are you?
I mean, I'm complaining about it because I came from LA to Toronto this week. I'm in Toronto for a week, and I was expecting it to be the best time to be in Toronto. The summer, so amazing. It's like, I love Toronto in the summer. Everybody is, I don't know, it just feels like everybody's super happy and ready to be in communication with new people, to go to the parks, do cool stuff. But it is cold and rainy. I'm no, I just LA was, when I left, there's this huge structure fire that the mayor and the governor declared a state of emergency for. And so it was just really bad air. It felt shitty. It smells terrible. Everybody's in masks. Well, not everybody, because, some people just won't do it anymore. But the people who are trying to protect their lungs are in masks. And it was just get me out of here. And I come to Toronto and I'm like, what the hell? I need a coat. What's going on?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's not the worst thing to need a coat. It's not the worst thing.
It's not the worst thing. It's not the worst thing. There are so many other worse things. We can look all around the world for examples of worse things. But it's not bad at all.
Ooh, what?
The fact that we've raised this money to do this project that we've been talking about. I mean, I know we announced that last week, but I just want to remind people,
yes.
One, we love you all for supporting the project, where we're hiring a journalist to do an investigation into how journalists across Canada have been silenced on the genocide, and how Honest Reporting Canada is doing that, how the mechanisms of all that works. Thank you for supporting that. And for those of you who applied, thank you. Thank you so much. And so, folks, you'll hear more about that once we've hired. And man, we're really excited to do this, this new project.
Oh my God, yes. So very excited. And we're entering the summer, so there's going to be a bit of a slowdown, a quietness, I think, for people to do that work. I say people, maybe persons. We'll be in touch with everyone who did apply, so expect to hear from us. But for everybody that donated and excited to see that work happen, well, know that we're undertaking it now. So that's really great.
Really, really great.
Sandy, have you seen the news from Montreal this past week?
I mean, yes, I have seen the news from Montreal. I was reading it this morning. It's a little confusing to parse out what's happened, but there's a bit of a CBC tracker on it. And so from what I can tell, there's a guy who's an incel who was shooting out of the window of a car, maybe, and I don't know at what. It seems unclear from the reports that I'm reading. And in this, what ends up, I guess, being a melee of shots, it seems 29 shots were fired, is what CBC is reporting, is heard on video, on footage. A police officer is killed. A civilian is killed. And the shooter's been apprehended. And there's all it seems to suggest as like a motive is that this person is an incel. Although there is like on the CBC like news updates, like quick updates tracker, almost Twitter style update thing. There's this like one thing that says the police are refusing to confirm whether the civilian who was killed was Jewish, but also though that's like the title of the tracker, when you go in and like read what is said, it's like at a press conference somebody asked if the victim was Jewish, and the police officer said, "Oh, we don't have that information." So I don't know, like there seems to also be a suggestion that maybe it was anti-Semitism, but it seems like there's not that much more information.
Yeah, the information environment on this one is pretty terrible. And if you get your information in French, you get a little bit more than what you have just said. So first things first, the shooter, it's been reported it was an Albertan and drove from Alberta to Montreal to do this attack. And there was a manifesto that was left behind. Nouveau TV has reported that. And the manifesto is several hundred pages. It seems like there might be some copies online. I have not seen a copy. I do hope I can see a copy at some point. And that the French media is making it pretty clear that the ideology that this person had or was writing about in the manifesto was incel. And so I think that we'll learn more in the next bit, but incel ideology, of course, is violent. And so that's not too surprising. I mean, if you hear someone doing a mass shooting wearing fatigues, incel, far right, that whole kind of world is it's not too much of a surprise. But again, we'll learn more about what this guy's motives might have been. But what's interesting is there's a whole angle that has been reported in French, and I haven't really seen it in English, but that it's the shooter set himself up at a hotel that's not downtown. It's in the Côte des Neiges neighborhood, right by the Décarie highway, and it seems as if he was obsessed with Pornhub. With the evils of Pornhub, and that he was in a hotel that was on the same block as the head office of Pornhub, which of course is in Montreal. So there's a whole situation there that needs to be reported and figured out. Now, there were 3 deaths. You mentioned the citizen, Michael Moshe Mizrahi, who was Jewish, and his synagogue had issued a statement confirming that he was the only civilian that was killed in this. There was a police officer killed as well, who's been identified as Mohammed Lamine Ben Redouane. And Ben Redouane had been a cop since 2021. There's also another civilian who is injured. There's no information from what I've seen on who that civilian is. By the time you're listening to this, it might all be out there. And there's no information either about who killed Mizrahi. Like you said, there was lots of bullets kind of flying everywhere. We do know that the bureau, the independent bureau investigating the BEI in French, is looking into this, which does happen when a police officer injures or kills civilians. And so the BEI will do that work, and we'll learn more probably in like months about what happened there. But I am stunned by the misinformation that I've seen online about this, including from people who hold national media positions. Have you seen any of this stuff, Sandy?
Well, no, and I just want to all that stuff that you just said, about Pornhub, and that is not. I'm not seeing that in the English media. It's just one of those things that is just makes so clear how news can be different if you get your news from English media versus French media, especially if it's something that's happening in Quebec. I'm sure English media will eventually catch up. I mean, gosh, it looks like, as I'm looking this stuff up, it looks like Wikipedia has caught up on this already. But it's like that that piece of it is not being reported in the English media, which seems like a pretty significant detail to leave out, especially when, there's always like these paragraphs of like, oh, we don't know what the motivation of the shooter was, but he seems to be an incel. It just seems like a pretty important detail that if it's being reported, should be reported in English as well. But to your question, no, I haven't seen the misinformation. Tell me more. What's going on? This is on what, Twitter?
Yeah, well, my first thing that I saw was on Facebook, and it was from an account that was run by Hillel Fuld, who claimed that there was Jewish hostages being taken in downtown Montreal in an anti-Semitic attack.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I was like, I saw that first and I was like, what is happening? And then I found the news and I was like, oh, that is not that. That's crazy that had been still posted several hours after the attack. Ben Mulrooney jumped in there as well. This is a Jewish neighborhood. Oh my God. Suggesting that this was an anti-Semitic attack specifically. And then you get Jesse Brown, who it feels like he needs this to be an anti-Semitic attack. He has said on the morning of the 23rd, so Wednesday morning, when this is obviously there's enough news to not say this. He posts, yes, the Montreal killer was an anti-Zionist. And it says he was also a misogynist, which tracks with media reports of him as an incel, but they left out his rants against the, quote, Judeo-bourgeois class, unquote. Why did they hide this? They had the manifesto yesterday. Now, I have not seen the manifesto myself, but I can talk a little bit about what other people are reporting is in it, but how is that for a reaction, Sandy? Having listened to what I had just said, all this information is public. It's all out there. I have done absolutely no journalism on this. And that is Jesse Brown's decided line of attack is that this guy is an anti-Zionist.
Oh my God. This is very not good. I'm on the app formerly known as Twitter right now, just taking a look. And the first tweet that pops up, because, whenever I sign on to this app, for whatever reason, it's like on my For You page, I don't follow. Do I follow Jesse? Maybe I do. Let me check. Oh, I do follow Jesse. Okay. Well, but for whatever reason, Elon Musk or Jesse Brown is always number one. Like the first tweets that I see, it's like super being pushed to me. And I've blocked Elon Musk, so I don't know how to get away from him. But anyway, it says he's written a tweet that's, along the lines of what you've said, but it says he's like, it's part of it. We don't yet know the killer's full motivation. And the relief expressed by some that he was an incel is vulgar. Incel rage culture has much to say about Jewish pornographers. We'll see.
What?
I don't know. I've maybe I'm missing the news of like the incel targeting of Jewish pornographers. I've never heard that before. But looking forward to the reporting if that's where we're at. But it does really seem like Jesse really wants this to be a proof of anti-Semitism, of which it's like, oh my God, like we've said so many times before on this podcast, there is proof of anti-Semitism out there. I don't know why people like Jesse are so desperate to look for it in places when, there's a burgeoning white supremacist like intensely right-wing culture out there that is making good on this kind of a strange attempt to do what Jesse is doing here. I don't understand. But the other thing that's really interesting is there's people like responding to Jesse, saying that the Jewish civilian was killed by the police. Is that Like, that's not confirmed.
That's not confirmed. And as I say, because the Bureau d'Enquête Indépendant is investigating, I mean, that is something that we probably should keep in our minds. Like, the BEI is only going to investigate if the police harmed or killed someone. I don't think they investigate because of a police being killed, for example. But we don't know. We don't know.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Now, we're recording this on Wednesday. And so if you're listening on Saturday, you'll already know a lot of these details likely. But TVA is reporting pretty much like right now, confirming things that have been confirmed elsewhere or kind of suggested elsewhere. So there is a name. The name of the shooter was Seth Hatfield. He was from Alberta, as I said. This is now being confirmed by the police. And the police are saying that it looks as if Hatfield was targeting and wanting to murder the CEO of Pornhub. And so that is the police's line. Pornhub has refused to comment, saying that there's investigation ongoing. But the shooter pretty clearly, renting a hotel across from the headquarters of ILO, which is the owner of Pornhub. That seems to be pretty much the connection there. Now, I've also been looking to see people kind of go through this person's manifesto. And I mean, one person who's read it is Michael Tracy, who people who are terminally online will know. This guy's nuts. And so, who knows? I
don't know him. Who is he? Who's that?
He's just an online person that has been, and most notably, trying to launder, I guess, the Epstein files. Like, he's been the one blogger who's been like, no, Epstein was a good guy. Okay. So he's like a chaotic, I'm not even sure I can say he's like solidly right wing, but he's like a libertarian anarchisty kind of right wing freak show. And every time he's been seen like trying to downplay or launder or whatever Epstein's behavior or reputation or whatever, it just comes across as being completely insane. But he is very online, and he has got his hands on the manifesto. And the way that he describes it, he says that his main ideological belief is opposing something he calls hypergamy. He blames
what?
Yeah, he blames the West for creating a social system where like nuclear families, I guess, or man-women pairings alone have collapsed. He says he opposes capitalism through that lens, which is funny, which he views as a primary enabler of hypergamy, says Michael Tracy. And then he praises China, North Korea, the Soviet Union, because he says that those countries facilitate monogamy. So, okay. He's also against mass immigration, cultural degeneracy, leftists, liberals, trans stuff, and so on, he says.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's like, in the universe of like far right ideology, it sounds like this guy fits pretty much in there, for sure. I think on the question of like anti-Semitism, I would be surprised if this guy was not anti-Semitic, because that also tends to go with this kind of world of hatred. But this is where I come back to Jesse Brown, and I'm so curious about like how for Brown it has to be turned into a political statement against Israel for some reason, and not being okay with it just being part of that broader universe of extreme hatred, which is violent, which targets people, which makes everybody unsafe, but that doesn't actually advance a political agenda in relation to the state of Israel.
One approach to this, right? Like the Jesse Brown approach to how anti-Semitism manifests and operates, demands more cops, demands like bubble protest zones where people can't protest, I guess, demands the complete crackdown on anyone who is supportive of Palestinians, of anyone who hates genocide, and demands that Canada continue to support a genocidal regime in Israel and the United States. The other approach to this, which, I mean, like, all of that I just said does nothing to curb anti-Semitism and arguably makes it worse. The other approach to this is to like see where anti-Semitism is growing, where it's being fomented in spaces online and off, and to understand that our provinces require some sort of strategy to address hateful organizing in this country and to stop it from continuing. And that approach, like, I don't understand why someone who is deeply concerned about violence and anti-Semitism wouldn't want to go that route, wouldn't want to ensure that there was some sort of plan there, unless the answer to not understanding all of this is actually that this is about propaganda for Israel rather than about actually protecting people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to put a cherry on top of this far-right fest, the Rebel News got their hands on the manifesto. They've published it, and so I guess I know what I'm doing for the rest of the day. And their headline is that the guy was far left and anti-Semitic. Far left.
What?
Yeah, and how did they come to that conclusion? Well, this reference of the Judeo-bourgeois class is the anti-Semitism, obviously. There's references to Zionist Jews and their involvement within the bourgeoisie. Oh my God. Like, basically what's really interesting is what's happening here is, as I said earlier, there's this, like, you know, if you do any research on the far right, there's this realm of extremism that far right researchers like talk about, and people don't necessarily fit in neatly with one of the categories, which is why you have to look at this as kind of like this world of far right stuff. And so it comprises not only one ideology like anti-Semitism or, you know, racism or Islamophobia or misogyny or transphobia, right? It's actually all of that in together. And it's usually this world of radicalization that then blames these things, these people, on the problems that the person experiences in the world. This is their explanation for it. And why would the Rebel News want to get out so quickly to make sure that Canadians see this guy as being a far left person, even though, like, there's no far left ideology anywhere that says that women have to marry men? Like, literally nowhere. All of the social degeneracy that this guy's talking about is literally social progress, is the stuff that, you know, left-wing people fight for. But anyway, the need for the Rebel News to distance themselves from this is why they're putting it out there that this has to be a left-wing person. They have to be so driven by anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, or, you know, the idea that Zionist Jews are controlling the world, that this is what's driving the ideology behind this person's attack and this person's violence. When it actually is just the far right in general, which the Rebel News has made its money off of for decades now. This is their world. This is their people. This is what their world engenders in people. We know this. There's no like actual debate about that. If you spend any time reading about the far right, you know the role that these extremist right wing far right garbage outlets have on people's brains. So, to go back to how people were reacting to this in the first place, it's like, you know, when a police officer's killed, you're not really going to get people criticizing the police, but obviously the police have to be the number one group that you look at in how they're managing a situation like this, number one. Number two, the attempt to make this about anti-Semitism in Israel from the start hides the fact that apparently this guy's going after Pornhub, which is kind of a completely different situation. And three, it also forces the conversation into such narrow constraints that it starts to completely get distorted and weird. And that, I think, is what we've seen in the last 24 hours is people have tried to jump on this as a political device. And I've also seen people say, like, well, we haven't even seen the manifesto yet. Like, maybe the police are just pinning on him incelism because it's, like, so odious. And it's like, folks, no one who has power in society cares about violence against women. No one. Like, literally, I posted a thread yesterday about this, about incels. And I said, before you know it, there will already be another femicide in Canada. And of course, last night there already was another femicide in my own city. So it's just like this goes back to the most classic things that we have to fight within society, which is scapegoating, the demonization of the other, and how all of this stuff is being used to explain to a whole generation of people why Canada is in the state that it's in, when the actual answers are not those at all, as we know.
Wow. There is so much there. Interestingly, so I went to the Rebel's website as you were speaking, and the Rebel is reporting that it seems like the civilian was killed by a police officer.
Oh, wow.
On top of everything, I mean, I'm not telling anybody to trust the Rebel News, but like on top of everything, just that if that detail is true, there's a lot happening in this particular case, and oh my gosh, like for that to be a part of it, that the person who was killed, who is Jewish, to have been killed by police officers responding to this, it's just beyond. Like there's a lot of issues here that need to be addressed, and that's a big piece of it. And I've also just like opened up the manifesto. It's a whopping 37 pages. I haven't read anything obviously yet, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And I hazard a guess that we're going to see a lot of stuff that one doesn't really make a lot of sense. Because when it comes to these types of incidents, these shootings, or attempts at mass shootings that we see where there's a manifesto attached, the one like through line is that they don't make a lot of sense. Like these are they tend to be people who have like who've lost it, and that again is something that. Like I was saying before, like the type of strategy that a country like Canada needs to engage right now needs to understand, like, and countries around the world really, actually, because this is not just happening in Canada, but it is something that we've seen here. It's like, in a world where people are struggling, are feeling desperate, and are increasingly isolated from one another, people look for answers to that, and they will find good answers sometimes, like connections in their communities or whatever, and we can make that easier for them. We can create a world, we can design a society that is easier for people to find one another and to find supports within one another, and to not be struggling as much as they are, or they will find support from places that are supporting increased organizing of hate, or really, really strange ideology, or AI that supports like mass delusions, whatever. Like, and we can make it easier for people to find those supports too. And I mean, quite frankly, that's what this society is doing by refusing to look at the issue and trying to prevent these things from happening. People will find supports. They will find something to help them deal with the difficulties that they're experiencing, with the multiple crises that scores of people in Canada are dealing with. Again, like last week, we talked about how many people. We briefly mentioned how many people in Canada who are experiencing food insecurity, who are turning to GoFundMe for support. Like this is bad. This is really bad. Like food banks across the country are really struggling. Like this is not an unrelated issue to people who would write manifestos that don't make a lot of sense, going out and committing intense acts of violence. Like this isn't like unfortunately, this isn't unique, right? Like we've seen these situations before. And so the question is, it's like, at what point do we, from the people who run this place, say like, are you going to do something about this? Like at what point do they do something about this? Because, fuck, there are people out there who are waiting, willing, and ready to like organize people into violence, and we can make that harder to do. It just takes some political will.
Yeah, well, one thing that certainly doesn't help widespread desperation and suffering, Sandy, the cost of housing. The cost of housing. The most fundamental thing. It's so fucking frustrating. I cannot believe, like, we are in a situation, like, okay, how clear can I make this? We have the largest gap between the rich and the poor in the history of Canada. Couche-Tard just announced that they made 95% higher profits last year than the year before. Where do those profits come from? Quote unquote inflation, quote unquote, right? All of this stuff that is lying to us about how everyone's trying, everyone's working really, really hard, we're doing our best. While the reality is actually, no, there's corporations that are profiting off of us, and we apparently are supposed to take it, right? I mean, when I look at like cans of tomato paste, which are supposed to cost like 49 cents, now costing almost $2. It's like, there's no inflation there. That's theft. This is criminality. That's what we're experiencing. And to give people the tools and the language and the understanding of where that criminality comes from, rather than allowing people to do the fascist thing and blame it on different groups of people, like that is super critical. But it gets worse and worse and worse when politicians promise to do things like, we're going to fix the housing problem, and do what we saw them do last week in Vancouver. So did you see this big housing announcement in Vancouver that's supposed to save everybody's housing lives?
I actually didn't see the announcement, but I did listen to The Current. So I listened to a little bit of how this is going to work. So for years, we've been told like the issue with housing, okay, Nora, is supply. It's supply. We just need to build more housing. People need more housing. It's simple supply and demand. If you increase the supply, the prices will go down. And I remember us on this podcast being like, it is 100% not supply. It's like capitalism. People, like, this is not the issue. A whole bunch of these units are available for rent at prices that people cannot afford because people are investing in this skyrocketing condo boom. I'm in Toronto now, and like, I can't, how like when you lived in Toronto, if you ever like were confused about where you were, you could just like figure out where south was by looking at the CN Tower.
Yep. Unless you went to Ryerson and you realized after third year that they had literally photoshopped the CN Tower into the wrong location on all the course reading material. But
sorry.
Anyway.
Excuse me? What strange lore was that? Okay. Did not know. Okay. But I can't see the CN Tower anymore because it's just condo land now. I can't see the CN Tower from like, and I walk all over the city. I basically can't see it from wherever I am because it's just condos everywhere. And there's, for people who don't know what's going on in Toronto, like people are moving out of the city in droves actually. And because the condos have like replaced a whole bunch of stuff that's cool in the city. And again, like they've had to implement in the city of Toronto, like an extra empty units tax. Like there's a tax on empty units that landlords have to pay if they're just sitting on empty units and not renting them out. And why is that? Is it because there's not enough supply? No, it's because they're charging too much for people to be able to afford to live in these places. But it's fine because they have so many that they don't need to have 100% 100% occupancy in all of their many condo units that they have. And so I did hear on The Current that the government is now like supporting some other developer again to like buy back these units or to buy these units and to just rent them out. It sounds like a bailout for developers who really need these units to sell.
Yeah. Well, because Sandy, like, we can't expect developers to sell at a loss.
God. It's just...
Right? And if we can't expect them to sell at a loss, then what are we going to do? They're just going to sit on these empty condos. And so the federal government has to do something. Obviously.
I mean, because otherwise what would happen? They would lose their businesses. There would be, the bubble would burst. There would be, businesses would fail. Like they've put so much work into this. How could we allow for them to fail? This whole model of making money might fail, and we can't have that. We cannot have that.
No.
There are too many people's retirement plans are wrapped up into this. So instead, we'll just continue to have people not be able to afford food or rent or have to choose between one or the other in a job market that continues to suck and in a economy where job security is a thing of the past. It's a wish. It's a hope. It's a dream. And it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I mean, this is happening in Ontario too, according to The Current. So it's like, all right, this is just the next step in like the worst parts of capitalism. As you like look at it and you see what's happening, like you're getting fleeced, that people are being exploited, and that the government is the partner in your exploitation, because there's no way that the government would help us out like that. Like where would it, why couldn't the government have such a program for people who, like, I don't know, actually need somewhere to live? Like, oh my God. No, it's just for the failing businesses.
You're asking too difficult a question for the government. Like this announcement was made, as I said, last week. And what I thought was so fascinating about it, like they made two separate announcements that, they made a couple of different announcements, but there are two announcements in particular that I thought were pretty interesting. So one is what you referred to, this idea that the government will do something related to developers and unhousing units, empty units. But they wouldn't say what they were going to do. They didn't say that they were going to bail out developers. They weren't going to say that they were going to purchase the units. They just said that they were going to do something and that there was some amount of money to do something, and that was it, which I thought was pretty fascinating. Like, come on, guys, you're making an announcement. What are you going to do with these empty units? Obviously, they're not just going to expropriate them, which they absolutely could, but anyway. And then the second announcement was that they are going to fund... This I thought was pretty wacky too. There are a lot of developer fees that are related to municipal infrastructure, because when a new project is dropped into a neighborhood, usually you have to, build things to connect that project to the sewer system. Sometimes you have to change roads because you have to have people have better access in and out of these new condos. Sometimes you're going to have to change other public infrastructure to allow a private developer to profit off of building a condo tower or whatever in a municipality. And so the federal government says that they're going to encourage municipalities to stop charging these fees. And if they cut the fees by 50%, then the federal government will be able to jump in and cover some of those costs. And so it's like, what? So first of all, if they reduce some of the costs, but not all of the costs, the municipalities don't get the money. Okay, then why would they do that? But then second of all, like, the fact that municipalities are expected to pay for as much as they are expected to pay for without the taxation powers of a province or the federal government is ridiculous. Like they are bodies of provincial governments, and they are at the whim of the politics of provincial governments. And yet they have to maintain everything in a municipality that we rely on all the time. The most direct political interventions, from potholes to snow removal to garbage collection to all this stuff that we all know and love. And so, over the years, municipalities have found other ways to pay for the lack of funding that they're getting for municipal infrastructure. And one of those ways is to charge condos a supplemental fee to be able to fund the infrastructure that supports the condo development. So in Quebec City, for example, one of the funding mechanisms we have to build the tramway is an extra fee on developers who have been positive, actually, on this fee, to make sure that the tramway gets built and it's going to service condos that are outside of the downtown core, that the condo developer can say, oh my God, you're going to live on a tramway. You will be able to commute to work in 20 minutes in comfort, not needing a car. You want to live here. And then the exchange for that is there is a fee tacked on to the development that then goes to the municipality that's going to go and fund Tom Cité, the project. And the federal government's like, no. We're going to take Canadians' money and supplant developers' money and developers' profits to do what developers should be paying for. And they only pay for this because we already have a funding crisis at the municipal level, thanks to chronic defunding from the province and the federal government. It's just like, okay, wow, yeah, I know you guys are schemy dudes. That's what the Liberals are, schemers. But this is pretty schemy. This is like pretty schemy, even for them.
It's so awful. It's just like tax breaks for all of the businesses, and any way that we can extract just a little more money out of the little guy who obviously doesn't have much to spend and can't even afford a place to live. That's the only place where they seem to want to really, really go hard. It's so weird until, you realize that everything is, all motivation in our political system is driven by money and those who have it. Because what will they tell you, Nora? What will they tell you? You can't make it hard for the developers, right? You can't make it hard for businesses because they bring jobs. And jobs is what allows people to live. And so this is ultimately good, right? Ultimately good. And anyway, we need more supply. So you can't make things difficult for them. Supply. It always just sounds so good for them, huh?
Well, that's the thing, is supply is actually just a code word for profit, right? Because supply, demand is us trying to find a place to live, but supply is the justification that developers need to build and to extract profits from these projects. And I think that, if you look at Canada and you look at the mix of housing that we have, there's obviously a gap of some levels of supply in different parts of the country. There are some cities that have extremely low vacancy rates. There are housing doesn't really reflect people's realities, as in alternative to the mainstream for people, 2 parents, 2 kid living kind of arrangement, nuclear family stuff that Manifesto Buddy was apparently railing against. We don't have places for people to live that reflect the ways that people are living anymore. And we haven't had this actually for a long, long time. This has been one of the primary drivers of the housing crisis, because houses in the 1950s to 1970s, when we had the real housing boom with 1 million houses built over 2 decades and a bit, they still didn't catch up to 2 external pressures on the housing market. One was immigration, so making sure that there was the housing that was needed to accommodate people immigrating to Canada and population growth. And the second was actually the housing explosion that is inherent when families break apart. And not just couples, but no longer caring for elderly relatives in the same house, and elderly relatives living on their own, or single individuals living without children, or couples actually divorcing instead of being forced to stay together because they can't afford to leave each other. Now we have this situation. There has been news in the last 2 weeks about how people are not able to separate from bad relationships because of the housing crisis. And certainly I think we all know people who are in this situation right now. And it's this is cancerous. And the cancer expresses itself in a lot of different ways. And the most extreme expression of that cancer is violence. It's violence in femicides. It's violence against children. It's violence within child services, and it's violence in people saying, "Well, I'm going to blame the freaking CEO of Pornhub, and I'm going to decide that that's the person who I'm going to blame on everything, and I'm going to go try to kill him." And then in the path of trying to kill him, you create this situation where a bunch of other people get killed, like. These are direct connections that people in power do not want you to understand, because they want you to think that this stuff is unrelated so that they can continue their program of profit, while just hoping that we don't make these connections for what happens when this level of profit is permitted within a society.